Ministers, youth delegates, friends, we are at a critical point in the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. While some countries are reopening, others are facing new surges of cases and deaths. Although we are all affected by the pandemic, we are not all affected equally. Countries, groups, and individuals that were already in situations of hardship have been hit the hardest, as is always the case in times of crisis. Young people are among the groups bearing the heaviest burden. Schools have been closed, labour markets upended, health systems have been pushed to the brink, and mobility and freedom has been severely limited. All the while, climate change and economic uncertainty lingers, and protracted crises continue to affect millions of people. People are anxious and worried for their future. With Russia's war in Ukraine, we can expect millions more to become acutely food insecure. The consequences are felt worldwide, especially by the world's poor and people living in less affluent countries. With the current critical situation for the world's food supply, the task of safeguarding food security, that is food from land as well as food from the ocean, has become even more important. We must protect and sustainably use oceans and land-based resources in order to create the future we want. We must continue to work for quality education for all, and wherever we go, we must remind each other that gender equality is necessary to ensure sustainable and inclusive growth. No government can reach the Sustainable Development Goals alone. To be successful, we need a whole-of-society approach for planning, implementing and reviewing the 2030 Agenda. Civil society, the private sector, Indigenous peoples, social partners and other stakeholders must all be included. And, of course, youth must have a seat at the table where decisions about our present and the future are being made. I'm proud that Norway has been a long-standing proponent for youth participation in processes at and delegations to the United Nations. We must continue to acknowledge the perspectives, capacities and competencies of young people. We must listen to their voices, learn from their experiences and include them in decision-making processes. Dear youth delegates, you are the ones who will be carrying the Sustainable Development Agenda forward. It's a big task. We are facing a planetary crisis at the same time as war and conflict continue to create immense suffering for civilian populations. Let me assure you that I will be standing alongside you, working relentlessly together with you for a sustainable, inclusive and resilient recovery. We need your strength and your go-ahead spirit, because we must move fast to create a world in which we can all live in peace and prosperity. With that, I wish to pass the floor on to Norway's youth delegate to this forum, Henrik Nordtun Gjertsen from the Norwegian Children and Youth Council. Henrik, the floor is yours.
Dear youth delegates and ministers, youth today are faced with the consequences of the severe actions previous generations have made by draining the planet's resources when we knew well what the outcome would be. The responsibility of dealing with the consequences should not lie on my generation's shoulders. But with the lack of adequate action from the world leaders, it seems like this will be the case. This responsibility lies especially with us who have enjoyed the wealth of these exploitations. My generation thought we had experienced our world-changing event when we faced a pandemic. This paled when there once again broke out war in Europe. My thoughts are with the Ukrainian people as they fight for their independence and their basic human rights. The attack on Ukraine will also greatly affect the world's supply of corn and wheat, which will have consequences for the world's poorest. It is more important than ever that every country has a secure access to food and sustainable food production systems. This crisis highlights the other grave crises around the world and the long road towards reaching all the SDGs. The work with SDG number 4 on quality education and 5 on gender equality is key to improving social equality and enable growth on the individual plane, but also for countries and regions. Work with SDG number 14 on life below water and 15, life on land, is key to developing a sustainable food system around the world. As youth, it is our ungrateful task to hold our politicians accountable for neglecting it. Lastly, I would like to give my strongest support to all the Ukrainian youth who now have to hide from bombs and bullets. Thank you.